The paper trembled in my hands, not because I was shaking, though God knows I should have been. The morning light streaming through our bedroom window made the ink shimmer like it was alive, like the words themselves were trying to escape the page before I could read them. Celestine, it began. Not Celeste, like he'd called me every day for the past 8 years. Not my love or sweetheart, or any of the 1,000 tender names that had become the soundtrack of our marriage. Just Celestine. Cold. Formal. Final. I should tell you how I found it. How I woke up that Tuesday morning in our apartment in Bellport Heights, reached across the bed, and felt nothing but cold sheets. How I called his name, Damien. Once, twice, 3 times into the silence. How I walked through our home, past the photographs of us in Santorini, past the coffee maker still warm with the brew he'd made himself, past the bathroom where his toothbrush stood alone in the holder like a forgotten soldier. The note was on the kitchen counter, weighted down by his wedding ring. That's when I knew. Before I read a single word, I knew. Celestine, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Not just from our home, but from this life we've built together. I need you to understand something, even if you can never forgive me. I'm not the man you think I am. I've been living a lie, and if I stay another day, another hour, I'll drag you down into a darkness you don't deserve. You are the best thing that ever happened to me, and that's exactly why I have to leave. Some stains don't wash out, Celeste. Some sins don't get second chances. Please don't look for me. Please don't try to understand. Just know that every moment with you was the only real thing in a life built on sand. I love you. I'm sorry. I'm gone. Damien. I read it 7 times. The words didn't change, but with each reading, they carved deeper, like a river cutting through stone. My legs gave out somewhere around the 4th reading, and I found myself sitting on our kitchen floor, the same tiles we'd chosen together at that home improvement store, laughing about grout colors like we had forever. The thing about heartbreak is that it doesn't come all at once. It's not a clean break, like a bone snapping. It's 1,000 small fractures, spiderwebbing through everything you thought was solid. With each breath, another crack appears. With each memory that surfaces, another piece of your foundation crumbles. I thought about calling someone, my sister Arya, my best friend Lennox, but what would I even say? My husband left me a note and disappeared? It sounded absurd, like a plot from a movie. Things like this didn't happen to real people, to us, to Damien, who organized surprise birthday parties and cried at wedding proposals in restaurants, and spent his Saturdays building shelves for our future nursery. The future nursery. God, I don't know how long I sat there. Long enough for the sun to shift from the east window to the south. Long enough for my legs to go numb. Long enough for the tears to dry into salt tracks on my cheeks. Long enough to read that note 700 more times, searching for clues, for hidden meanings, for some explanation that made sense of the impossible. That's when I noticed it. A shadow. Just the faintest impression on the back of the page, like something had been written on another sheet of paper pressed against this one. You know how sometimes you write on a notepad and the pen pressure leaves ghost marks on the page beneath? Like that. But deliberate, purposeful. I held the note up to the light. My blood turned to ice water. There were words, faint but unmistakable, written in a different hand, pressed through from something that had once rested against this very page. I stumbled to the desk, pulled out a pencil, and with shaking hands, began to shade lightly over the back of the note, the old detective trick making the impressed words stand out in white against the graphite. What appeared made my heart stop completely. Target: Celestine Morrison. Status: married to asset. Threat level: minimal. Recommendation: eliminate if compromise occurs. Handler signature required. Below that, a date: 3 months ago. And below that, a single word that made the room spin. Approved. I dropped the pencil. It rolled across the desk and fell to the floor with a sound like a bone breaking. My husband hadn't left me because he loved me. He'd left me because someone had ordered my death, and the approval form had somehow ended up pressed against his goodbye note. The man I'd loved for 8 years, the man who held me during thunderstorms and made me breakfast in bed and promised me forever, was what? An asset? A spy? An assassin? And I was a target. Or I had been. Or I still was. The note fell from my hands as I stood, moving on autopilot to the window. I looked out at Bellport Heights, at the street where we'd walked our dog Winston every evening, at the coffee shop where we'd had our first date, at the ordinary world that had just revealed itself to be a stage set, painted scenery hiding something far darker. How much of my life had been real? How much had been surveillance? When he kissed me goodbye each morning, was he thinking about his mission? When he made love to me, was he thinking about his handler? When he proposed on that beach in Oregon, was it genuine? Or was it part of some larger operation I couldn't begin to understand? I thought I was dealing with heartbreak. I thought I was mourning a marriage. But standing there, looking at that note, at those ghost words that had torn through the veil of my reality, I realized I was mourning something far worse. I was mourning the death of truth itself. Every memory I had was now suspect. Every moment was now evidence in a trial I didn't understand. Every "I love you" was now a question mark. Every touch was now a potential calculation. Every smile was now a mask, and I had no idea what lay beneath. The room tilted. Or maybe I did. I found myself gripping the windowsill, my knuckles white, my breathing shallow. Somewhere in the distance, a siren wailed. Someone's emergency, someone's crisis, someone's normal Tuesday catastrophe, the kind that made sense, that fit into the world's regular programming. But mine was something else entirely. I turned back to look at the note on the floor, at the wedding ring beside it, at the ghost words that had shattered my reality more completely than the goodbye ever could. And I made a decision. If Damien thought he could leave me with a note and a mystery, if he thought he could vanish into whatever shadow world he'd been living in, if he thought I would just accept this and move on, he was wrong. I wasn't going to grieve. I wasn't going to collapse. I wasn't going to be the target or the widow or the fool. I was going to find the truth. And when I did, someone was going to pay for every lie, every stolen moment, every counterfeit memory. The hunt was on. And this time, I was the one doing the hunting. Take a moment right now and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I need to know who's brave enough to stick with this story to the end. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now, because what happens next will change everything you thought you knew about love, lies, and loyalty. Trust me, you don't want to miss a single chapter of this. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every shadow in our apartment felt like it was watching me. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like footsteps. Every distant car engine could have been someone coming to finish what that eliminate recommendation had started. By dawn, I'd made coffee I didn't drink and stared at that note until the words blurred together. The front side still said goodbye. The back still said murder. Both were written in ink, but only one had been meant for my eyes. The question wasn't whether Damien had lied to me. That much was clear as shattered glass. The question was how deep the lie went, and more importantly, how I was supposed to unravel 8 years of deception while potentially being hunted by whoever had approved my elimination. I needed help. But who do you call when your reality has been inverted? The police would think I was hysterical. A lawyer would need evidence I didn't have. My family would try to comfort me, tell me Damien must have gotten involved with something terrible, urge me to let it go and move on with my life. But moving on required knowing what I was moving on from. And right now, I didn't even know who I'd been married to. I thought about Damien's office. He worked in financial consulting, or so I'd believed. Morrison & Reed Associates, a boutique firm specializing in international asset management. I'd been to the office exactly 3 times in 8 years. Now I understood why. Each visit had been carefully orchestrated. A holiday party with other spouses, a charity auction where everyone performed their roles perfectly, a brief stop to drop off his forgotten phone where I'd barely made it past reception. Red flags I'd painted green because I loved him. At 8 a.m., I called his office. A woman answered, voice professionally warm. Morrison & Reed Associates, how may I direct your call? I need to speak with Damien Morrison, please. This is his wife. A pause. Too long. Too calculated. I'm sorry, Mrs. Morrison. Damien is out of the office this week. Can I take a message? When will he be back? Another pause. We're not certain of his return date. Would you like to speak with his partner, Mr. Reed? Yes, please. The hold music was Vivaldi, The Four Seasons, Winter. How fitting. A man's voice came on the line, smooth as expensive whiskey. Mrs. Morrison, Thaddeus Reed. I'm so sorry for the confusion. Damien mentioned he'd be taking some personal time. Family matter, I believe he said. What family matter? He didn't specify. I assumed you would know. The lie was so polished I could see my reflection in it. Mr. Reed, I need to come by the office, today. There are some of Damien's things I need to collect. Of course. Although, Mrs. Morrison, perhaps it would be better if I'll be there at noon. I hung up before he could refuse. The office was in the financial district, a glass tower that reflected the sky so perfectly you could convince yourself it wasn't there at all. Another metaphor I should have noticed earlier. I dressed carefully. Black slacks, cream blouse, the pearl earrings Damien had given me for our 5th anniversary. Armor disguised as elegance. The lobby was all marble and money. The elevator was empty. I watched the floors tick upward, feeling like I was ascending into a different dimension. 23rd floor, Morrison & Reed Associates. The doors opened onto tasteful gray carpeting and walls lined with abstract art that probably cost more than our car. The receptionist looked up, and I saw it immediately. Recognition, followed by something else. Fear? Pity? She reached for her phone, but I was already walking past her, down the hall toward where I remembered Damien's office being. Mrs. Morrison, please wait. A door opened. Thaddeus Reed emerged, all silver hair and practiced sympathy. He was exactly the kind of handsome that came with age and money. The kind that made you think of senators and CEOs and men who'd never had to raise their own voices to make people obey. Celestine, please come into my office. We can talk privately. His office was corner suite, windows overlooking the city. The desk was clear except for a single photograph. Reed with the mayor at some fundraising gala. No family photos, no personal touches. Just power, displayed casually. I'll be direct, Mrs. Morrison. Damien resigned 3 days ago. He came in early Monday morning, submitted his formal resignation, and cleared out his office. We haven't heard from him since. Resigned. Effective immediately. No notice period. He left a generous settlement for his partnership buyout and... Reed hesitated, then seemed to decide something. And a letter for you. He asked me to give it to you if you came by. He opened a desk drawer and pulled out an envelope. Plain white. My name in Damien's handwriting. I didn't reach for it. What did Damien really do here, Mr. Reed? Financial consulting. International asset. Please don't insult me. We both know that's not true. Reed's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. A calculation. A recalibration. What did Damien tell you about his work? Nothing that matters now. What I want to know is why someone marked me for elimination. I'd expected shock, denial. Instead, Reed simply nodded, as if I'd confirmed something he'd suspected. You found the transfer form. Transfer form? That's what we call them. When an operative's cover is at risk, when civilian attachments become complications, a transfer form is filed. It's not actually an order to eliminate, Mrs. Morrison. It's an assessment of risk levels and recommendations for how to proceed. In your case, the recommendation was to terminate the operation, not terminate you. Then why does it say eliminate if compromise occurs? Eliminate the attachment. The relationship. If Damien's cover was blown, he was to extract himself from your life immediately, with no trace back to the agency. What agency? Reed stood, walked to the window. I can't tell you that. What I can tell you is that Damien spent 8 years protecting you. Every decision he made, every lie he told, was to keep you separate from his other life. And when the operation ended, when the transfer was approved, he did exactly what he was supposed to do. He left. He broke your heart instead of breaking your neck, Mrs. Morrison. Because despite everything, he loved you. That part was real. How am I supposed to believe anything was real? Because he violated protocol by leaving you that note. Because he's violating protocol right now by leaving you this. Reed held up the second envelope. Operatives are supposed to vanish completely. No explanations, no goodbyes, no threads to pull. But Damien couldn't do it. He couldn't leave you with nothing. Which means either he's the worst spy I've ever trained, or you're the best thing that ever happened to a man who'd forgotten what good things felt like. I took the envelope. It was heavier than the first note. Something was inside besides paper. One more thing, Mrs. Morrison. Damien's mission is over, but the world he was operating in isn't. If you go digging, if you start asking questions, if you try to find him, you'll attract attention from people who won't be as sentimental as I am. My advice? Read his letter. Mourn your marriage. Move on with your life. Be grateful you're sitting here having this conversation instead of being a footnote in a classified file. Is that a threat? It's a courtesy. The last one you'll get. I stood, clutching the envelope. Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Reed. I wasn't honest, Mrs. Morrison. I was merciful. There's a difference. I made it to the elevator before my hands started shaking. I made it to the lobby before the tears came. I made it to my car before I opened the second envelope. Inside was a letter, 3 pages, Damien's handwriting, cramped and urgent. And beneath the pages, something cold and metallic. A key. I read the letter standing in the parking garage, my breath fogging in the November air, and with each paragraph, the world shifted again. He hadn't been a spy. He'd been a cleaner. Someone who made problems disappear. And his last problem, his final assignment before the transfer was approved, had been a man named Viktor Sokolov. A weapons dealer. A monster. Someone who'd hurt so many people that when Damien finally eliminated him, no one in the intelligence community mourned. But Sokolov had a brother, and that brother had resources. And that brother had been getting close, connecting dots, following trails, which meant anyone connected to Damien was now in danger, including me, especially me. I'm not running because I want to, Celeste. I'm running because they're coming, and if I stay, they'll use you to get to me. They'll hurt you. They'll break you. And I can't let that happen. The key is to a storage unit, locker 247 at Secure Space on Highland Avenue. Inside is everything you need. New identity documents, cash, instructions. If I don't contact you within 60 days, use them. Disappear. Start over. Live the life you deserve, even if I can't be in it. And if I do contact you, then maybe, somehow, we'll find a way through this. Together. Or as close to together as people like us can get. I love you. That was never a lie. Damien. 60 days. I looked at the key in my palm. It was small, ordinary, the kind that opened 1 million storage units in 1 million facilities across the country. But this one opened my escape route, my exit from a life that had already ended, my chance to become someone else. Or I closed my fist around the key. Or I could find Damien before his 60-day deadline. I could figure out where Viktor Sokolov's brother was. I could stop running and start hunting. I could take control of a story that had been written for me without my consent. The old Celestine, the one who'd woken up yesterday morning in a safe world, would have taken the escape route, would have followed instructions, would have trusted that the professional killers and intelligence operatives knew better than her. But the old Celestine had died on the kitchen floor with that first note. The new one was done being protected. The new one wanted answers. Wanted revenge. Want to look into Damien's eyes and hear the truth from his lips, instead of reading it in letters written by a ghost. I got in my car, pulled out my phone, and did something I'd never thought I'd do. I called the one person I knew who lived in the shadows. My cousin, Alara. The one the family didn't talk about. The one who'd gone to prison for hacking into corporate servers and had emerged 3 years later with skills the government found useful enough to commute her sentence. She answered on the 3rd ring. Celeste? Is this a butt dial or did someone die? I need your help, and I can't explain why over the phone. A pause. Then, text me an address. I'll be there in an hour. And Celeste, if this is about what I think it's about, you're either very brave or very stupid. What do you think it's about? Your husband's a ghost, sweetheart. Has been for days. His digital footprint vanished Tuesday morning like someone hit delete on his entire existence. Either he's dead, or he's one of them. One of who? The people who make other people disappear. Now text me that address, and let's see which version we're dealing with. Because if he's one of them, and he left you behind, You're either the luckiest woman alive or the most endangered. Either way, we're going to need coffee and a lot of hardware." She hung up. I sat in my car, key in one hand, phone in the other, standing at a crossroads that would define everything that came next. 60 days to disappear, or 60 days to hunt. I chose violence. Alara arrived at my apartment driving a vehicle that could only be described as aggressively unremarkable. A gray sedan, 5 years old, no distinctive features. The kind of car security cameras would forget they'd ever seen. She'd changed since her release. The pink streak in her dark hair was gone, replaced by a severe cut that made her look like a corporate attorney, but her eyes still held that particular gleam of someone who'd seen behind the curtain and couldn't unsee it. She walked into my apartment, did a quick visual sweep, then pulled a small device from her bag and started waving it around like a mystical wand. "What is that?" "Bug detector. If your husband is who I think he is, this place might be wired for sound and video. Hold on." She moved methodically through each room, checking outlets, smoke detectors, light fixtures. When she reached the bedroom, the device chirped. My blood froze. Alara pointed at the digital alarm clock on Damien's nightstand. She gestured for me to follow her into the bathroom, turned on the shower, and spoke close to my ear. 3 devices. One in the bedroom, one in the kitchen, one in the living room. Professional grade, not the kind you buy at a spy store. The kind that cost serious money and transmit to secure servers. Was he watching me? Or someone was watching both of you? Either way, we're leaving them alone for now. If we disable them, whoever's on the other end knows you know. Better to let them think you're just a grieving wife going through the motions. We sat at my kitchen table, speaking in careful tones, saying nothing that would alert whatever ghosts were listening. Alara pulled out a laptop that looked like it had been assembled from several different machines, each component deliberately mismatched. She connected to my Wi-Fi, then immediately tunneled through what she called 7 layers of proxy hell. "Tell me everything, and I mean everything. Details matter." I showed her both notes, watched her face remain perfectly neutral as she read them. She photographed each one with a specialized camera, then uploaded the images to her laptop. Within minutes, she had the text isolated, enhanced, analyzed. The handwriting on the front note is genuine. Same pressure patterns, same letter formations as other samples of Damien's writing. But the impression on the back? She pulled up a magnified image. That's from a standard government transfer form. See these numbers at the top? That's a file classification code. And this signature at the bottom? I can run it through some databases, but it's going to take time. How much time? For this kind of search? Could be hours, could be days. Depends on how deep the encryption is. But Celeste, you need to understand something. If I start pulling on these threads, if I start querying these databases, people notice. The kind of people who notice are the kind of people you don't want noticing. I need to find Damien. Why? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean, why? I mean, what do you actually want? Answers? Revenge? Closure? To stop him? To save him? To hurt him like he hurt you? Because each of those requires a different strategy, and some of them are mutually exclusive. I thought about that. Really thought about it. What did I want? I want the truth. All of it. And then I want to decide whether he deserves forgiveness or a bullet. Alara smiled. It wasn't a pleasant smile. Now that's a mission objective I can work with. But first, we need to understand who we're dealing with. This Sokolov brother. Victor's family. We need intelligence before we move. She typed furiously, screens flickering with cascading data. Viktor Sokolov, arms dealer, eliminated 7 weeks ago in Prague, officially ruled a heart attack. Unofficially, the intelligence community threw a party. The man was responsible for weapons flowing into war zones, terrorist cells, criminal organizations. He was a nightmare wrapped in expensive suits. And his brother? Alexei Sokolov, younger by 3 years. Less flashy than Victor, but potentially more dangerous. He runs the legitimate side of the family business. Real estate, construction, shipping. But it's all infrastructure for moving money and materials that can't move through legal channels. Since Victor's death, Alexei has been consolidating power. He's also been asking questions, offering rewards, following trails. Has he found Damien? Not yet, but he's getting close. See these? She pointed to a series of digital breadcrumbs on her screen. These are searches through facial recognition databases, immigration records, financial transactions. Someone's hunting Damien hard, with serious resources, and they're being systematic about it, starting with his known associates, his operation history, his past missions. Eventually, they'll circle back to you. How long do I have? You mean before Alexei's people come knocking? Hard to say. But Celeste, you need to think about your endgame here. Even if we find Damien, even if we find Alexei, what's your plan? You're not a spy. You're not an assassin. You're a woman who taught 2nd grade and volunteers at animal shelters, and whose biggest crisis until 3 days ago was whether to get bangs. I was a 2nd grade teacher, I corrected. Past tense. That woman died when she found those notes. The woman sitting here now? She's someone else. Someone who needs to know if her entire marriage was a lie. Someone who needs to look her husband in the eyes and ask him if he ever really loved her, or if I was just cover, just camouflage, just another lie in a life built on deception. Ilara studied me for a long moment. You know what I see when I look at you right now? I see someone who's about to make a choice that can't be unmade. I see someone standing at the edge of a cliff, about to jump, because staying where you are hurts more than falling. And I get it. I really do. But once you jump, there's no climbing back up. The life you had, even if it was built on lies, it's over. The question is, what life do you want on the other side of this? One where I know the truth. Even if the truth destroys you? I'm already destroyed. At least this way I'll know why. She nodded, like I'd passed some test I didn't know I was taking.
Okay, then let's build the strategy. First, we need to get you off the grid. The surveillance in your apartment means someone's tracking your movements. We need to give them a narrative that keeps you looking innocent while we work. What kind of narrative? Grieving widow seeking closure. You go through the motions. You contact his friends, his family. You cry to your support network. You play the part of someone trying to understand why her husband left. Meanwhile, you and I work in parallel. I dig into the digital trail while you follow the physical one. What physical trail? The storage unit, locker 247. We need to see what Damien left you, but we do it smart. We assume the storage facility is being watched. We assume the contents are monitored. We get in, we catalog what's there, we leave everything exactly as we found it, and we use the information to plan our next move. When? Tonight, 2 a.m. Security's light, cameras can be looped. I'll handle the technical side. You just need to be ready to run if things go wrong. The rest of the day passed in a strange fugue state. I called my sister Aria, let her comfort me,
accepted her offers of dinner and distraction. I called Damien's mother, listened to her confusion and worry, pretended I knew as little as she did. I played my part perfectly, the abandoned wife seeking answers. But inside, I was counting down the hours. At 1:30 a.m., Elara texted, "Car outside, come down, no phone." I left my phone on the charger, plugged in, playing music on a loop so whoever was listening would think I was still home. I took the stairs instead of the elevator, emerged into the street where Elara's gray sedan idled at the curb. We drove in silence. Highland Avenue was industrial zone, all warehouses and storage facilities, abandoned at night except for the occasional security patrol. Secure Space was a 4-story building, corrugated metal and concrete, lit by sickly yellow sodium lights. Elara parked 2 blocks away. "Here's how this works. I've already looped their camera system. We've got a 20-minute window before the security company realizes their feed is on repeat. Locker 247 is on the 2nd floor, northeast corner. Get in, catalog what you see, get out. If anything feels wrong, if you see anyone, abort immediately." She handed me a small camera. "Document everything. Don't touch anything you don't have to. We're ghosts, understand?" I nodded. The facility's side entrance had a keypad. Elara had the code somehow. We moved through fluorescent-lit hallways that smelled like dust and old cardboard. 2nd floor, northeast corner, locker 247. I used Damien's key. The lock clicked. The door swung open. Inside was my new life, carefully packaged. 3 passports, different names, different photos, but all my face, aged with makeup techniques I recognized from movie special effects. Bank cards linked to accounts I'd never opened. A smartphone, still in its box, with a number already programmed in. 50,000 in cash, mixed denominations, non-sequential bills. And beneath it all, a laptop. I photographed everything, hands steady despite the adrenaline singing through my veins. Elara monitored from the hallway, counting down our time. 15 minutes left, 12, 10. I opened the laptop. It booted immediately, no password required. The desktop had a single folder, for Celeste. Inside were files, dozens of them, mission reports, target profiles, photographs of Damien with people I didn't recognize, in places I'd never heard of, doing things I couldn't have imagined. And at the bottom, a video file. "Watch this first," was the file name. I clicked it. Damien's face filled the screen. He looked exhausted, older than I remembered, like he'd aged years in days. He was somewhere bare and concrete, a safe house maybe, speaking directly to the camera. "Celeste, if you're watching this, it means I failed. It means Alexei found me, or the agency burned me, or something went wrong with the plan. If you're watching this, I'm probably dead." My breath caught. "I need you to understand something. Everything I told you in the letters was true, but it wasn't complete. I'm not just running from Alexei. I'm running from the agency. Because I learned something I shouldn't have learned. Something about Viktor Sokolov's operation. Something that implicated people at the highest levels. People who can't afford for that information to become public." He leaned closer to the camera, his eyes intense. Viktor wasn't eliminated because he was an arms dealer. He was eliminated because he was about to blow the whistle on who his real clients were. Government officials, intelligence directors, people we're supposed to trust. And when I completed the mission, when I went through his files, I found the evidence. Names, account numbers, transaction records. Proof of treason that goes all the way to the top. My hand covered my mouth. I copied everything, and I hid it. And that's why they want me dead. Not because I killed Victor, because I know what Victor knew. And now, if you're watching this, you know too. I'm sorry, Celeste. I'm so goddamn sorry. I thought I could protect you by leaving. But if they find you, if they realize you have access to this locker, to these files, you become the target. So you have to run. You have to use those documents, that money, and you have to disappear. Unless... He paused, and something changed in his expression. Something dangerous. Something that reminded me why he'd been good at his job. Unless you want to fight. Unless you want to take what I found and burn it all down. Expose them. Destroy them. Make them pay for every life they've ruined, including ours. The files are encrypted. The password is the date we met, the time you said yes to dinner, and the name of the restaurant. You'll know it. You remember everything about that night, just like I do. If you decrypt the files, if you go public,
You'll be in danger. Serious danger. But you'll also have the power to bring down an entire network of corruption and betrayal. Your choice, Celeste. Run and live safely, or fight and maybe die. But either way, know that loving you was the only true thing I ever did, and I'm sorry I wasn't better at it. The video ended. I stared at the blank screen, my mind racing. 7 minutes left. Ilara's voice in my ear. Celeste, we need to move. I need to take the laptop. Bad idea. They'll know someone's been here. Then they'll know. I'm taking it. I grabbed the laptop, closed the locker, and we ran. We made it to the car with 3 minutes to spare. Made it 6 blocks before we saw the headlights behind us. Made it to the highway before we realized we were being followed. Hold on, Ilara said. And suddenly we were weaving through traffic, taking exits at the last second, running red lights and racing through neighborhoods I didn't recognize. 20 minutes later, we'd lost them. Or they'd let us go. I couldn't tell which was worse. Ilara pulled into a parking garage, killed the engine, and turned to me. So, what's the play? I held the laptop like it was a bomb, which, in a way, it was. I decrypt the files. I verify what Damien found. And then I make a decision. And if what he found is real? If it really is evidence of corruption at the highest levels? I thought about the question I'd been avoiding, the one that mattered. If you found out that people in power had betrayed everything they swore to protect, would you expose them even if it meant risking everything? Or would you choose safety over justice? Drop your answer in the comments. I need to know where you stand. Then I burn them down, I said. Every last one of them. And I make them understand that you don't get to ruin people's lives without consequences. Even if those people are just second-grade teachers who fell in love with the wrong man. Ilara smiled, that dangerous smile again. Good, because I didn't break federal law and risk prison time just to watch you run away. Now let's see what your husband died to protect. We didn't go back to my apartment. Ilara had a place, she said. Somewhere off the grid. Somewhere the people with surveillance equipment and government resources wouldn't think to look. It turned out to be a repurposed industrial loft in the warehouse district, the kind of space that officially didn't exist according to any lease agreement or property record. The interior was part bunker, part command center. Server racks hummed against one wall. Multiple monitors displayed cascading data streams I couldn't begin to interpret. The windows were blacked out with material that looked military grade. This wasn't just a safe house. This was a war room.
Welcome to my office, Ilara said, setting the laptop on a steel table that dominated the center of the space. Now, before we open Pandora's box, you need to understand what we're dealing with. If Damien's telling the truth, if there really is evidence of high-level corruption on this laptop, we're not just fighting Alexei Sokolov anymore. We're fighting the entire intelligence apparatus. People with unlimited resources, no oversight, and a vested interest in making problems disappear. Permanently. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to make sure you understand the stakes. Once we decrypt these files, once we see what's inside, we can't unsee it. We become targets. Not just you, but me too. Everyone connected to this. Your sister, your friends, anyone they can use as leverage. So I'm asking you one more time. Are you sure? I thought about Damien's face on that video. The exhaustion, the regret, the love that even his lies couldn't completely hide. I thought about 8 years of marriage that might have been theater, but felt real every single day. I thought about the woman I'd been 72 hours ago, safe and ignorant and small. I didn't want to be her anymore. The password, I said. He said it was the date we met, the time I said yes, and the name of the restaurant. The memory came back perfect and complete. October 15th, 6 years ago. Not our wedding anniversary, but the night everything started. I'd been at a bookstore, reaching for a cookbook on the top shelf, when someone behind me said, "You know that one's mostly pictures, right? If you actually want to learn to cook, try the one 3 books to the left." I'd turned around annoyed, ready to tell off whoever was mansplaining my cookbook choices, and found Damien grinning at me like he'd just won something. He was holding the same cookbook I'd been reaching for. "Or," he'd said, "we could skip the books entirely and I could take you to a place that actually knows how to make these dishes. 7:30 work for you?" I'd said yes at 6:47 p.m., according to the text I'd sent Arya immediately after. And the restaurant had been called Sorella's. 1015671844747 Sorella's, I said, typing as I spoke. All one word, no spaces. The laptop hummed. The encryption broke. Files cascaded across the screen, hundreds of them, organized by date and operation name. My hands were shaking as I opened the first folder. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. Transaction records, wire transfers, account numbers linked to shell corporations. But it was the names attached to those accounts that made everything else fade away. Deputy Director Marcus Ashford of the CIA. Senator Patricia Holloway, Chair of the Intelligence Committee. General Raymond Kessler, Joint Chiefs of Staff. A dozen others, each one a person whose face I'd seen on the news, whose statements I'd trusted, whose authority I'd never thought to question. They weren't just clients of Viktor Sokolov's arms-dealing operation. They were partners, co-conspirators. They'd been using Sokolov's network to move weapons to places that Congress had specifically forbidden, to fund operations that had no official approval, to line their own pockets while soldiers died in wars they'd manufactured for profit. Jesus Christ, Ilara whispered, scanning the files over my shoulder. This isn't just corruption. This is a shadow government. These people have been running their own operations, completely outside any legal framework for years. And Viktor was their middleman until he decided he wanted a bigger cut, or threatened to go public, or... So they had him killed. They sent Damien to eliminate him, not because he was an arms dealer, but because he was their arms dealer who'd become a liability. And Damien figured it out, found the evidence, and instead of reporting back to his handlers like a good little assassin, he kept it. Which means whoever gave him the order to kill Victor is almost certainly on this list. I scrolled through the files, looking for Damien's mission briefing. Found it in a folder marked Prague Operation. The orders had come through a handler named Thaddeus Reed. The same Thaddeus Reed who'd given me Damien's second letter. The same man who'd warned me not to go looking. The same man who was probably sitting in his corner office right now, knowing I'd gone to that storage unit, knowing I'd taken the laptop, knowing I was one step away from destroying everything he'd built. "We need to go public with this," I said. "Right now. Send it to every news organization, every journalist, every watchdog group. Make it impossible to contain." "Hold on." Elara was typing furiously on her own system. "If we dump this without protection, we're dead within hours. These people don't just have power, they have assets, teams. The kind of people who make dissidents vanish in the middle of the night. We need insurance first. We need to make sure that if anything happens to us, the information still gets out. Dead man's switch, multiple redundancies, distributed networks. It'll take time to set up properly." "How much time?" 48 hours, maybe less if I don't sleep." "We don't have 48 hours. They know I have the laptop. They're already coming." "Then we make them think we're running. We plant digital breadcrumbs suggesting you're heading north, maybe Canada, trying to disappear. Meanwhile, we stay right here and build our insurance policy. They'll be looking for a scared wife on the run, not a woman preparing to burn their entire world down." It made sense, but every instinct I had screamed that we were running out of time. That somewhere in the darkness, people were moving pieces on a board I couldn't see, getting closer with every passing second. "There's something else," I said, opening another folder. Communications between Damien and someone else. Someone inside the agency. "Look at these dates. This person was warning him, telling him about the investigation into Victor, about how it was really a cleanup operation, about how anyone who knew too much would be eliminated." The messages were encrypted, but Damien had kept the decryption key with the files. Smart. Trusting that I'd be the one to find them, that I'd be the one to understand. The sender's identity was coded as Nightingale. The messages painted a picture of someone deep inside the intelligence community, someone with access to classified operations, someone who'd been trying to help Damien escape before it was too late. The last message was dated 5 days ago. "They know you copied the files. Reed's been authorized to clean up loose ends. That includes civilians. Get your wife out. Get her somewhere safe. And for God's sake, don't trust anyone in the organization. Half of them are compromised. The rot goes deeper than you think. Meet me at the place we first trained. I can get you both out. But you have to move now." N. "The place they first trained," Elara said. "Any idea where that is?" I shook my head. Damien had never talked about his training, about how he'd become what he was. That part of his life had been locked away, forbidden territory even in our most intimate conversations. But then I remembered something, a nightmare he'd had, maybe 2 years ago. He'd woken up gasping, covered in sweat, and I'd held him while he shook. "Just a dream," he'd said. "Just old memories. This place in Virginia. The farm, they called it, where they taught us how to kill people and call it patriotism." "The farm," I said. "It's a CIA training facility. Camp Peary in Virginia." Elara's fingers flew across her keyboard. "Okay, officially, Camp Peary is a military reservation. Unofficially, it's where the CIA trains clandestine officers. If this Nightingale wanted to meet Damien somewhere secure, somewhere they both knew, that would be the place. So we go there." "We don't go anywhere. Celeste, listen to me. This could be a trap. Nightingale could be working for Reed, luring Damien into the open so they can eliminate him and recover the files. You walking into that situation would be suicide. Or it could be genuine, someone trying to help, someone who knows the truth and wants to stop it. Based on what? A series of messages that could have been written by anyone? You're letting hope override logic, and that's how people die. She was right. I knew she was right. But something in those messages felt real. The urgency, the fear, the sense of someone trapped in a nightmare, trying to do the right thing despite impossible odds. It reminded me of Damien's video, of the man I'd loved, or thought I'd loved, trying to protect me even as everything fell apart. What if Damien's already there? I asked. What if he went to meet Nightingale and walked into a trap? What if he's dying right now while we sit here debating strategy? Then he's already dead, and us rushing in changes nothing except adding our bodies to the count. The words hung in the air between us, brutal and true. Ilara wasn't being cruel. She was being realistic, and reality was something I needed to start accepting. My phone buzzed. Not the phone I'd left at my apartment, but the burner phone Ilara had given me earlier. Unknown number. I showed her the screen. "Don't answer," she said. I answered anyway. Put it on speaker. "Mrs. Morrison." Thaddeus Reed's voice, smooth as ever. "I hope you're somewhere comfortable, somewhere you feel safe. Because we need to have a conversation about property that doesn't belong to you." "The laptop belongs to my husband. That makes it community property." A soft chuckle. "Your husband is a fugitive who stole classified materials. The laptop is government property, illegally removed from secure facilities. Returning it would be in your best interest." "Would it? Or would returning it get me killed like you killed Viktor Sokolov?" Silence. Then, "I think you've been reading too many spy novels, Mrs. Morrison. Viktor Sokolov died of natural causes. Heart attack. Very tragic. If your husband told you otherwise, he was delusional. The stress of his work, perhaps. It affects some operatives more than others. The files on this laptop tell a different story. They tell a story about corruption, treason, and murder. And I think the American people deserve to know that story." "Mrs. Morrison, you're playing a game you don't understand, with stakes you can't comprehend. If you release those files, you won't be striking a blow for justice. You'll be putting thousands of ongoing operations at risk. You'll be exposing intelligence sources who will be killed because you couldn't leave well enough alone. You'll be destroying lives of good people doing difficult work in impossible situations. Is that really what you want?" "What I want is the truth." "The truth is complicated. The truth is messy. The truth is that sometimes good people have to do bad things to protect this country from threats you can't imagine. Viktor Sokolov wasn't selling weapons to terrorists for profit.
He was part of an operation designed to track where those weapons went, who bought them, how they moved through the supply chain. Yes, some weapons reached bad people. Yes, some people died. But the intelligence we gained saved thousands more. That's the truth, Mrs. Morrison. Not the simplified version your husband fed you to justify his betrayal." I looked at Ilara. She shook her head, mouthed the word, lies. "If that's true," I said, "why are you so afraid of me releasing the files? Why not let the intelligence community review them and make their own determination?" Because there are some secrets that serve the greater good by remaining secret. And there are some people who prefer to tear down rather than build up, who prefer chaos to order, who prefer feeling righteous to being effective. Your husband, I'm afraid, became one of those people.
Don't make the same mistake. Is Damien alive? Another pause. Longer this time. I don't know. Honestly. He disappeared 5 days ago. If he's smart, he's already on a beach somewhere, drinking rum and pretending his old life never existed. If he's stupid, he's chasing phantoms and conspiracy theories that will get him killed. Which category do you want to fall into, Mrs. Morrison? The category where I don't let corrupt officials manipulate me into silence. Then you're choosing the wrong side of history. And that's unfortunate, because I liked you, Celestine. I liked how you made Damien happy, how you gave him something worth protecting. I was hoping you'd be smart enough to walk away. But if you insist on making yourself a problem, you'll be handled like any other problem. That's not a threat. It's a statement of fact. You have 24 hours to return the laptop to the drop location I'm about to text you. After that, the conversation becomes considerably less friendly. Do you understand? I understand perfectly. You're terrified that the truth is about to destroy everything you've built, and you should be. I hung up. Elada stared at me like I'd just set myself on fire. That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've ever witnessed. Both, probably. But it bought us information. Reed doesn't know where we are. He doesn't know about this place. And he's worried enough to threaten me directly, which means he's vulnerable. The files scare him. They should scare you, too. Because now he knows you're not backing down. Now he knows you're a legitimate threat. Which means now he stops trying to intimidate you and starts trying to eliminate you. Let him try. I'm done being afraid. I'm done being the victim in a story other people are writing. If Reed wants these files, he's going to have to come through me to get them. And I'm not giving them back. Not ever. My burner phone buzzed again. A text this time. Not from Reed. From an unknown number with a Virginia area code. If you want to see your husband alive, come to Camp Peary. Service entrance, midnight, tomorrow. Come alone. Tell no one. This is his only chance. N. I showed Elada the text. It's a trap, she said immediately. Has to be. Reed calls, threatens you, then mysteriously you get a text from Nightingale? They're coordinating, trying to flush you out. Or Nightingale intercepted Reed's call and realized I need help. Realized Damien needs help. You're reaching. You're letting emotion override analysis. Maybe. Or maybe I'm trusting my instincts. My instincts that tell me Damien wouldn't have left me those clues, that video, those files, if he didn't think I could handle this. If he didn't think I was strong enough to see it through. Strength and suicide aren't the same thing. Neither are caution and cowardice. The words came out harsher than I intended. Elada's expression hardened. I'm trying to keep you alive, Celeste. I'm trying to make sure you don't throw your life away on a romantic notion that your husband is some noble spy who just needs rescuing. Maybe he's exactly what Reed says he is. A traitor who stole classified information and is now playing martyr to justify his crimes. Do you believe that? She was quiet for a long moment. No, I don't. The files are real. The corruption is real. But that doesn't mean running into an obvious trap is smart. It means we need to be strategic, careful. We set up the insurance policy first, make sure the information is protected. Then we consider making contact with Nightingale. In that order. And if Damien's dead by then? If we wait too long and he bleeds out in some black site prison while we're being strategic? Then he dies knowing he did the right thing, knowing he protected you, knowing he gave you a chance to live. Don't waste that gift by throwing yourself into the fire trying to save someone who might already be ash. Her words hit like a slap. Because part of me knew she was right. Part of me knew that going to Camp Peary was probably suicide, that Nightingale was probably a fiction, that Damien was probably already dead, or worse. But another part of me, the part that had been born when I found those notes, refused to accept it, refused to let fear and practicality dictate my choices, refused to be careful when being careful meant letting the people I loved suffer alone. "I'm going," I said. "Tomorrow night. Midnight. Camp Peary. You can help me or not, but I'm going." Elara closed her eyes, breathed deep, then opened them with a look of resigned determination. "Fine, but we do it smart. We set up contingencies, backup plans, escape routes. And if anything feels wrong, if any detail is off, we abort immediately. Agreed?" "Agreed. And we finish the insurance policy first. We make sure that even if we both die tomorrow night, the files still go public. That's non-negotiable." "Okay." She nodded, turned back to her computers. "Then we have 36 hours to prepare for the stupidest, most dangerous thing either of us has ever done. Better get comfortable. We're not sleeping until this is done." I pulled up a chair beside her, watching code scroll across screens I didn't understand, watching her build the safety net that would catch us if we fell. Outside, dawn was breaking. But in that warehouse, in that war room where two women were preparing to fight an empire, it felt like the darkness was just beginning. The next 36 hours passed in a blur of preparation that felt like descending into madness. Elara worked with the focused intensity of someone defusing a bomb, her fingers flying across keyboards, her eyes bloodshot from staring at screens. She was building what she called a digital doomsday device, a distributed network that would automatically release Damien's files to 200 journalists, watchdog organizations, and international news outlets if we failed to check in every 12 hours. "It's not perfect," she admitted, around hour 20 of our marathon session. "A sophisticated enough intelligence operation could probably track and shut down most of the distribution nodes before the files spread too far. But probably isn't certainly. And the chaos of them trying to contain it would draw attention anyway. Sometimes the cover-up is more damning than the crime." I was learning things I'd never wanted to know. How to encrypt communications. How to move without leaving a digital trail. How to recognize surveillance, both human and electronic. How to field strip and load the handgun Elara produced from somewhere in her arsenal of illegal equipment. "I don't want to kill anyone," I said, holding the weapon like it might bite me. Neither did I the first time. But wanting and doing are different things. If someone's trying to kill you tomorrow night, your moral qualms won't stop their bullets. This might. Keep it in your waistband, safety on. Don't draw it unless you're ready to use it. Don't point it at anything you don't intend to destroy. And if you do have to shoot, aim for center mass and keep shooting until the threat stops moving. Understood? I nodded, feeling the weight of the gun like an anchor, dragging me deeper into a world I didn't belong in. But maybe that was the point. Maybe I did belong here now. Maybe the moment I chose to hunt instead of hide, I'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. The old Celestine, who cried at military homecoming videos and believed in the fundamental goodness of institutions, was gone. The woman standing in this warehouse, learning how to kill, was someone new, someone harder, someone capable of violence if it meant protecting the truth. By midnight of the second day, we were ready. The insurance policy was active, redundant, distributed across servers in 17 countries. The files were time-stamped, authenticated, ready to flood the internet if our automated check-ins stopped. We had burner phones, fake IDs, a vehicle with cloned plates, and a plan that was 50% strategy and 50% desperate hope. Camp Peary was a 2-hour drive from Alara's warehouse. We left at 9 p.m., giving ourselves time to scout the location, identify escape routes, and position ourselves strategically. The night was moonless, which Alara said was good for concealment but bad for navigation. Everything was a trade-off. Everything was risk. The facility itself was enormous. Thousands of acres of Virginia woodland hiding a small city of training facilities, housing complexes, and classified operations buildings. The public knew it existed, but not what happened inside. Locals called it the farm and knew better than to ask questions. Tourists who accidentally wandered too close were politely but firmly redirected by security that appeared from nowhere. We parked a mile from the service entrance Nightingale had specified, in a rest area used by truckers. Alara had hacked the facility's security schedule and knew that patrols changed every 4 hours, with a 10-minute gap at midnight, when the outgoing and incoming teams overlapped. That was our window. "You still have time to back out," Alara said, checking her own weapon, a compact pistol that looked military-grade. No shame in choosing to live. Damien didn't choose to live. He chose to fight. The least I can do is honor that. Damien was trained for this. You're a second-grade teacher pretending to be a spy. Was a second-grade teacher. Now I'm a widow pretending to be brave enough to finish what my husband started. Close enough. At 11:45, we moved into the tree line. The service entrance was a maintenance gate, unmarked, hidden behind a false front that looked like a utility shed. Alara had the access code from her hack. The gate opened silently, and we slipped through into the facility proper. The interior was maze-like. Service roads that went nowhere, buildings that looked abandoned but probably weren't. Everything designed to confuse, to disorient, to make unauthorized visitors feel lost and vulnerable. Which I absolutely did. "The old training buildings are northwest," Alara whispered, consulting a map on her phone. "If Nightingale is meeting you where Damien first trained, that's the most likely location. But Celeste, if this is an ambush, they'll have every advantage. Cover, numbers, equipment. We go in, we scan quickly, and if it feels wrong, we run. No heroics, no last stands. We live to fight another day." We moved through the darkness like ghosts, staying off the service roads, using the tree cover to mask our approach. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure someone would hear it. Every shadow looked like an enemy. Every sound was a threat. I'd never been so terrified in my entire life. The training building came into view at 11:58. It was old, Cold War-era architecture, concrete and institutional grimness. Some windows were broken. The door hung slightly ajar. It looked abandoned, forgotten, the kind of place where secrets went to die. "This feels wrong," Alara said. "Too quiet, too convenient. I say we abort. 2 more minutes, that's all I'm asking. 2 minutes past midnight." She looked at me, then nodded. We positioned ourselves behind a large oak tree with clear sight lines to the building entrance. Waited. Watched. 1 minute passed, then another. At exactly midnight, a figure emerged from the building. Male, 6 feet tall, moving with practiced caution. He stood in the doorway, scanning the area, and in the faint light from the facility's distant security lamps, I saw his face. My breath stopped. It was Damien. He was alive. Thinner than I remembered, moving with a slight limp, but alive. Real. Standing 50 yards away like a miracle or a ghost, or both. I started to move forward. Alara grabbed my arm, held me back. "Wait, something's not right." Damien raised his hand, made a gesture I didn't understand. Then he spoke, voice carrying across the distance. I know you're there, Celeste. I know you got my message, but you need to leave, right now. This is a trap. Nightingale isn't who you think. They got to her. They turned her. She's been working for Reed all along, feeding me information to track you. Please, just go. Save yourself. Don't. The gunshot came from behind us. I felt the impact before I heard the sound. Felt Ilara jerk beside me. Felt her weight collapse against my shoulder. Felt her blood, hot and immediate, soaking through my jacket. Run, she gasped. Run! I grabbed her, tried to pull her deeper into the tree line, but more gunshots erupted, from multiple directions. A coordinated ambush, exactly as Ilara had predicted. I saw muzzle flashes in the darkness, heard bullets hitting trees, thudding into earth, heard shouting, orders being called in tactical precision. Damien was moving toward us, sprinting across the open ground with complete disregard for the gunfire. He reached us in seconds, scooped up Ilara like she weighed nothing, and pulled us both behind a concrete barrier I hadn't even noticed. Chest wound, he said, examining Ilara with professional detachment. Through and through. Missed the heart. You're lucky. Don't feel lucky, Ilara gasped. Damien was already working, pulling supplies from a pack he'd apparently hidden nearby. Bandages, hemostatic agent, pressure dressings. He worked with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 100 times, stopping the bleeding, stabilizing the wound, while bullets continued to snap through the air above us. 12 hostiles, he said, voice calm despite the chaos. Reed's private team, not official agency operators. Deniable assets, which means we don't have backup coming. It's just us. There are 3 of us against 12 trained killers, I said. That's not just us. That's suicide. Damien looked at me then. Really looked at me. And I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Not love, though that was there. Not regret, though that was there too. What I saw was recognition. He was seeing me as I'd become, not as I'd been. Seeing the woman who'd hunted him across half a conspiracy, who'd broken into secure facilities, who'd chosen violence over safety. He smiled, grim and real. Welcome to my world, Celeste. Sorry you had to see it, but I'm glad you're here anyway. Then he handed me a second gun, bigger than the one Ilara had given me, with a spare magazine and a look that said everything his words didn't. We were going to fight, against impossible odds, against professional killers, against an entire corrupt system that wanted us dead. And somehow, crouched behind that concrete barrier with bullets flying and Ilara bleeding, and Damien beside me looking more alive than he'd been in any of our 8 years together, I felt something unexpected. Hope. Not the naive hope of the old Celestine, but the fierce, defiant hope of someone who'd seen the worst and decided to fight anyway. The hope of someone who'd been betrayed and lied to and used, but refused to stay a victim. The hope of someone who'd finally become the protagonist of her own story. So what's the plan? I asked Damien. He checked his weapon, counted ammunition, then looked at me with something that might have been pride. We make them regret underestimating a second-grade teacher. Then we burn their entire operation to the ground. You in? I thought about every lie, every manipulation, every person who'd looked at me and seen nothing but collateral damage. Every powerful man who'd thought he could trade lives like poker chips and never face consequences. I thought about the woman I'd been, and the woman I'd become. I'm in, I said. Let's make them pay. And in the darkness of Camp Peary, surrounded by enemies and running out of options, Celestine Morrison died for the final time. And something far more dangerous was born. The first hostile appeared around the concrete barrier at 12:04 a.m. He moved with tactical precision, weapon raised, finger on the trigger. He expected to find 3 civilians cowering in the darkness, easy targets for a trained operator. Instead, Damien put 2 rounds center mass before the man could even register the threat. The hostile dropped without a sound. Damien was already moving, dragging the body behind our barrier, stripping it of weapons, ammunition, and communication equipment. Bluetooth earpiece, he said, handing it to me. Put this in. You need to hear what they're saying. I inserted the device, and suddenly I was hearing voices. Cold, professional, coordinating their assault with military efficiency. Target 1 down. Repeat. Omega 3 is down. All units converge on position 7. Authorization to use lethal force on all targets. Copy that. Moving to flank from the north. Eyes on 2 targets behind barrier. Negative visual on primary target. Morrison's in the wind. Find him. But Morrison wasn't in the wind. Morrison was 3 feet to my right, his back against the concrete, checking sight lines and calculating angles like he was planning a chess game instead of a firefight. This was who he really was. Not the gentle husband who brought me coffee in bed. Not the man who cried at our wedding. This was the operator, the weapon the government had forged and then tried to throw away when he became inconvenient. Alara, status? He asked. She was pale, breathing shallow, but her eyes were sharp. Functional. Not dead yet. Give me a weapon. You're in no condition. Give me a goddamn weapon, Morrison, or I'll take one off your corpse in 10 minutes. Your choice. He handed her a pistol. She checked the magazine, racked the slide, and positioned herself to cover our right flank, despite the blood still seeping through her bandages. I'd never seen anything more terrifying, or more beautiful. They're going to rush us, Damien said. Overwhelming force. They know they have the numbers. Our only advantage is that they want me alive. Reed needs to know if I made copies, if I have insurance policies, if I've already sent the file somewhere. They won't risk killing me unless absolutely necessary. You too. They'll kill without hesitation. Comforting, I said. Realistic. Which means we use it. Celeste, I need you to do something that's going to sound insane. Everything tonight sounds insane. Try me. He met my eyes. I need you to surrender. I stared at him. What? Walk out from behind this barrier. Hands up. Tell them you'll cooperate. You'll give them the laptop, whatever they want. Draw them in close. Make them think they've won. And then? Then I kill them all while they're focused on you. It's the only tactical advantage we have. Your apparent vulnerability creates the opening I need. You want to use me as bait. I want to use your apparent helplessness against people who assume women are easy targets. There's a difference. I looked at Alara. She nodded. Just slightly. It's sound tactically. Horrible ethically. But sound. The question is whether you trust him. Did I? This man who'd lied to me for 8 years? Who'd built our entire marriage on a foundation of deception? Who'd left me a goodbye note that broke my heart and a hidden truth that broke my reality? But then I remembered the video, the exhaustion in his voice, the way he'd said, "Loving you was the only true thing I ever did." The way he was looking at me now, like I was the most important thing in his world, even while he was asking me to walk into lethal danger. If I die, I said, the files go public anyway. The insurance policy Alara built. So this isn't about protecting information anymore. This is about surviving, about making sure the truth comes out and we live to see it. Exactly. Then I trust you. Let's do this. I stood before I could reconsider, stepped out from behind the barrier with my hands raised, the picture of defeated surrender. The shooting stopped immediately. 12 weapons trained on me from the darkness. 12 professional killers deciding whether I was legitimate or a trap. "Don't shoot!" I called out, letting my voice shake. Not hard, I was legitimately terrified. "I'll cooperate. I'll give you whatever you want. The laptop, the files, everything. Just please don't kill me. I'm just a teacher. I don't know anything about any of this." A figure emerged from the tree line. Tall, built like a linebacker, moving with the confidence of someone who'd never met a problem he couldn't solve with violence. He approached cautiously, weapon trained on my center mass, finger on the trigger. "Where's Morrison?" "Gone. He ran when the shooting started. Left us here. He said he'd come back, but—" I let tears come, not entirely fake. "He's not coming back, is he? He left me again." The hostile moved closer, 10 feet away, then 5. Close enough that I could see his eyes calculating, see him deciding I was harmless. Just another civilian, caught up in something beyond her comprehension, breaking down under stress. "The laptop," he demanded. "Where is it?" "In the car. Back at the rest area. I can show you. I can take you there. Please, I just want to go home. I just want this to be over." He reached for his communication device. "Base, this is Omega-1. I have the wife. Morrison's fled the scene. She says the laptop is in a vehicle 1 mile north, requesting extraction and—" Damien rose from the shadows behind him like death itself. The hostile never saw it coming. One moment he was reporting his success. The next, Damien's arm was around his throat, applying pressure to the carotid artery with surgical precision. The man struggled for maybe 3 seconds before going limp. Not dead, just unconscious. Damien lowered him silently to the ground. "Omega-1, repeat last transmission. Omega-1, do you copy?" The voice in the earpiece was urgent now, concerned. Damien pressed his finger to his lips, signaling me to stay quiet. He picked up the hostile's radio. "Copy, base," Damien said, voice a perfect mimicry of the unconscious man. "Just securing the target. Stand by." Then he was moving again, fluid and lethal, disappearing into the darkness. I stood, frozen, still playing my role, hands raised, trembling. From the tree line, I could see the other hostiles emerging, weapons lowered slightly, thinking the crisis was over. The next 90 seconds were controlled chaos. Damien moved through them like a ghost, silent, efficient, brutal. He'd been doing this for years, I realized. This was his language. Violence was how he spoke when words weren't enough. He wasn't cruel about it, wasn't theatrical. He simply eliminated threats with the minimum necessary force, working through the hostile team like a professional executing a plan. 2 more went down in close-quarters combat. One tried to call for backup and took a round to the shoulder that dropped him. Another had the tactical sense to retreat, to call this in as a failed operation. But Ilara shot him from our defensive position, despite her injury. Her round took him in the leg, and he collapsed, screaming. Within 2 minutes, 8 of the 12 hostiles were neutralized. The remaining 4 realized they were outmatched and tried to execute a tactical withdrawal. But Damien had positioned himself between them and their escape route. They were trapped, and they knew it. "Reed!" Damien called out into the darkness. I know you're listening. I know you're watching on their body cameras. So listen carefully. Your team failed. Your trap failed. And in approximately 10 minutes, I'm going to walk out of here with my wife, with our evidence, and with enough ammunition to bring down everyone in your network. You want to stop me? Come do it yourself. Stop hiding behind expendable assets and face me like the man you pretend to be. Silence. Then, through the earpiece, a different voice. Smooth, educated, familiar. Thaddeus Reed himself. Damien, you always were the best I ever trained. The most skilled, the most dedicated, the most moral, which, frankly, was your weakness. You actually believed we were doing good work, that the lies were for the greater good, that the bodies were necessary sacrifices. I knew eventually you'd see the truth and it would break you. I just hoped it would take longer. The truth didn't break me, Reed. The truth set me free. And it's about to free a lot of other people, too. You think releasing those files will change anything? You think exposing our operations will make the world safer? All you'll do is create chaos. You'll collapse networks that keep terrorists in check. You'll expose assets who'll be killed by the dozens. You'll make martyrs of us and villains of yourself. And for what? For your conscience? For your wife's naive sense of justice? I felt Damien's hand on my shoulder, steadying, supporting. For the truth, he said simply, because people deserve to know who they've given power to. They deserve to choose whether they want to be protected by monsters or take their chances with transparency. You don't get to make that choice for them anymore. Then you're signing your own death warrant. And hers. I'll find you, Damien. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually. And when I do, you'll wish you'd taken my original offer and just disappeared. Looking forward to it. One more thing, Reed. Your remaining team, the 4 still standing, tell them to drop their weapons and walk away. Right now. Or I stop being merciful. They're professionals. They don't walk away from missions. Then they die. Their choice. A long pause. Then, through the earpiece, Reed's voice giving the order. All units, stand down. Return to base. The operation is terminated. I watched as the 4 remaining hostiles lowered their weapons, frustration and relief warring on their faces. They melted back into the darkness, leaving their fallen comrades behind. Within 30 seconds, we were alone in the training grounds, except for the casualties. Damien immediately returned to Alara, checking her wound. We need to get you to a hospital. No hospitals. Gunshot wound means police reports. Police reports mean Reed finds us in hours. I have a contact. Doctor who doesn't ask questions. Get me to a phone with secure line. We moved quickly, gathering weapons, supplies, everything we needed. Damien rigged something he called presence for Reed's people. Motion-triggered alarms that would delay any follow-up team but not injure them. Even now, even after everything, he was drawing lines, trying to minimize harm, trying to be something better than what they'd made him. The extraction took 20 minutes, back through the facility, through the service entrance, to Alara's vehicle. Damien drove while I kept pressure on Alara's wound in the back seat. She gave directions to a clinic in Richmond, an unremarkable building in an industrial area, where a woman named Dr. Keiko apparently specialized in treating people who couldn't go to legitimate hospitals. Dr. Keiko took one look at Alara's wound and got to work without asking a single question. While she operated, Damien and I sat in a waiting room that smelled like antiseptic and regret. I'm sorry, he said finally, for all of it, for lying, for leaving, for dragging you into this nightmare. Don't apologize for the truth. Apologize for the lies. Okay, I'm sorry for the lies. Every single one. But Celeste, you need to understand, some of those lies were the most honest things I ever said. When I told you I loved you, when I said you made me want to be better, when I promised you forever, those weren't cover. Those weren't protocol. Those were real. How do I know? How do I separate what was real from what was mission? He was quiet for a long moment. The mission was to stay isolated, to avoid emotional entanglements, to keep my cover identity shallow and forgettable. Everything I did with you violated my operational parameters. Every dinner, every vacation, every late-night conversation about our future. The mission said stay distant. I got closer than I've ever been to anyone. The mission said keep no personal photographs. I kept hundreds. The mission said don't fall in love. I fell anyway. And when they told you to leave? When they approved my elimination? They didn't approve your elimination. They approved eliminating our relationship, cutting ties, burning the cover identity. But Reed phrased it deliberately to make me think you were in danger, to make me panic and run. Because he knew if I thought you were at risk, I'd do anything to protect you, even leave you, even break your heart to save your life. So the threat was never real? The threat became real the moment I took those files. Reed probably would have left you alone if I'd just vanished quietly. But I couldn't do that. I couldn't leave you with nothing. So I left notes, left clues, left evidence. And in doing so, I made you a loose end, made you dangerous to them. Everything you've been through, every moment of terror and confusion and danger, that's on me. That's my fault. I thought about that, about the choice he'd made. To tell me the truth and put me in danger, or lie to me and keep me safe. There was something almost beautiful in how he'd chosen wrong, how he'd valued my agency over my safety, how he'd trusted me to handle the truth even when it destroyed my world. I forgive you, I said. Not for everything, not yet, but for enough, for trying, for caring, for being human instead of being the perfect weapon they wanted. He looked at me like I'd just given him something precious. What happens now? Now we release the files. We go public. We bring down everyone in Reed's network. And then we figure out if there's anything left of us worth salvaging. And if there isn't, then at least we'll know we stood for something real at the end. That's more than most people get. Dr. Keiko emerged 3 hours later. She'll live. The wound was clean, no major organ damage. She needs rest, antibiotics, and no strenuous activity for 6 weeks. Can you provide that? Yes, I said, though I had no idea where we'd go or how we'd survive. We moved Alara to a safe house that Damien knew about, a small apartment under a false identity that had never been compromised. While she recovered, Damien and I worked on the final phase of the operation. We contacted journalists, verified the files, built a narrative that would make sense to people who didn't live in the shadow world we'd been trapped in. We chose 3 journalists to receive the full cache of files simultaneously. A veteran investigative reporter at the Washington Post, an international correspondent at The Guardian, and an independent journalist known for breaking intelligence community stories. We gave them everything. The transaction records, the communications, the proof of corruption that went to the highest levels of government. We gave them 72 hours to verify and prepare their stories before we went completely public. And during those 72 hours, while the world was about to catch fire, Damien and I had time to talk. Really talk. For the first time in our entire relationship, with no lies between us. "Did you ever want children?" I asked him one night, sitting on the safe house balcony watching the city lights. "With you? Yes, more than anything. But I knew it wasn't fair. Knew I couldn't bring a child into this life, couldn't risk them being used as leverage. So I kept making excuses, saying we should wait, saying we had time, when really I was just trying to protect them from a threat you didn't even know existed." "I thought you didn't want them. I thought maybe you didn't want me." "I wanted you so much it terrified me. You were supposed to be cover. You became everything. And I didn't know how to reconcile that with who I was, what I'd done, the blood on my hands that never seemed to wash off, no matter how many times you touched me and made me feel clean." I took his hand, looked at those hands that had killed people, saved people, held me through nightmares, built me bookshelves, and loaded weapons with equal skill. "We can't go back," I said. "Can't rebuild what we had. That marriage died with those notes. But maybe we can build something new, something honest, something that doesn't require forgiveness because it never requires lies." "What would that look like?" "I don't know yet, but I'm willing to find out, if you are." He squeezed my hand. "I'm willing. Whatever it takes, however long it takes, I'm willing." The files went public on a Tuesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, the story had exploded across every major news outlet. By Tuesday evening, Congress was calling emergency hearings. By Wednesday, 3 high-ranking officials had resigned. By Thursday, the FBI had announced investigations into the entire intelligence network. Reid tried to spin it, called it a disinformation campaign, Russian interference, a disgruntled operative's revenge fantasy. But the evidence was too solid, too documented, too damning. Within 2 weeks, the entire network began collapsing like a house of cards. Reid himself was arrested on a Saturday morning. We watched it on the news from our safe house, seeing him led out of his office in handcuffs, his face maintaining that smooth composure even as his world ended. He looked directly at the camera once, and I knew he was looking at Damien, promising revenge, promising this wasn't over. But it was over. The corruption was exposed. The secrets were out. The victims had names. The perpetrators were being held accountable. It wasn't perfect justice. Some people would escape consequences through legal maneuvering or political connections. But it was something. It was more than the silence and complicity that had reigned before. 3 months later, Elara had recovered enough to walk without pain. She'd decided to go legitimate, or as legitimate as someone with her skills could go. She started a cybersecurity consulting firm, using her talents to protect people instead of breaking into systems. She and I met for coffee once a week. 2 women who'd seen too much and survived anyway, who'd become sisters through trauma and fire. Damien and I bought a small house in the mountains of North Carolina. Nothing fancy, nothing that drew attention. Just a place where we could breathe, where we could try to figure out who we were when we weren't running. He consulted for the congressional investigation, providing testimony that helped dismantle what remained of the corrupt network. I started volunteering at a local community center, teaching literacy to adults who'd never had the chance to learn. We didn't remarry. Couldn't bring ourselves to repeat those vows that had been tainted by lies. But we built something different, a partnership based on truth. Mornings where we shared coffee and silence. Evenings where we shared stories and scars. Nights where we held each other and remembered that we'd survived when we shouldn't have. One evening, 8 months after everything fell apart and came together again, I found Damien standing on our porch, looking out at the mountains, and I knew that look, that weight of memory, that ghost of guilt. "Viktor Sokolov," I said. It wasn't a question. "Viktor Sokolov," he confirmed. "I think about him sometimes, about whether he deserved to die, about whether I had the right to make that choice. Reed said he was a monster. He was, but he was also a father, a husband, a man who probably thought he was doing what he had to do to survive in a corrupt system. I killed him anyway, because I was ordered to, because I believed I was serving something larger than myself. And now I know that the people giving me orders were worse than he ever was. Regret? Uncertainty. Which is worse, maybe. At least with regret, you know you did wrong. With uncertainty, you're stuck in the middle, wondering if any of it meant anything, if any choice you make matters when the whole system is diseased. I stood beside him, shoulder to shoulder, looking at the same mountains, the same fading light. It matters. Every choice matters. You could have stayed silent. You could have let the corruption continue. You could have taken the easy path and let the powerful stay powerful. But you didn't. You chose truth over safety, justice over comfort. That matters, Damien. Even if it doesn't feel like enough, it matters. He turned to me then, and I saw tears in his eyes. The first time I'd seen him cry since all of this began. I don't know how to be good. Don't know if I ever was. But I know I want to try. With you, if you'll let me. I'll let you. On one condition. Anything. No more secrets. Not ever. If something scares you, you tell me. If something haunts you, you tell me. If you're planning to take down a corrupt government agency, you tell me before you steal the evidence. We do this together, or we don't do it at all. He smiled through the tears. Deal. Together. All of it. Even the impossible parts. Especially the impossible parts. We stood there as darkness fell. Two people who'd been shattered and reassembled into something new. Not fixed. Not healed. But functional. Together. Real. The goodbye note had broken my heart. The truth on the back had broken my reality. But somewhere in the breaking, in the shattering, in the desperate fight to survive and expose and become, I'd found something unexpected. I'd found myself. The real Celestine. Not the naive teacher. Not the innocent wife. But the woman who'd stared into the darkness and decided to bring a flashlight. The woman who'd been given a choice between safety and truth, and chose truth every single time. And I'd found Damien. Not the perfect husband, not the gentle lie, but the flawed, damaged, trying man who'd loved me enough to destroy everything we'd built rather than let me live in ignorance. Was it enough? Was it justice? Was it the ending we deserved? I didn't know. But as we stood on that porch, watching stars emerge in the sky that had always been there but we'd never taken time to see, I thought maybe it was something better than an ending. Maybe it was a beginning. Maybe we'd get it right this time. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The end. Epilogue. 2 years later, I received a letter. Not a threatening one, not a goodbye. Just a simple envelope with no return address, postmark from Washington, D.C. Inside was a newspaper clipping. Former Deputy Director Thaddeus Reed sentenced to 15 years for corruption. Below it, a single sentence in handwriting I didn't recognize. Some stains do wash out. Some sins do get second chances. Thank you for proving me wrong. N. Nightingale. Whoever she was, wherever she was, She'd survived too. She'd been part of it all, complicit or coerced, and she'd survived. Maybe she'd even testified. Maybe she'd chosen truth over loyalty, like Damien had. I showed the letter to Damien. He studied it for a long moment, then carefully filed it away with the other evidence of our past life. The life we'd escaped. The life that had made us who we were. "Second chances," he said. "Think we're using ours well?" I looked around our small house, at the art I'd started making, painting the mountains at different times of day, trying to capture light. At the books Damien was reading, psychology and ethics and philosophy, trying to understand who he'd been and who he wanted to become. At the life we'd built from ruins. "I think we're trying," I said. "And that's more than most people get." "More than we deserved." "Maybe. But we're making the most of it anyway." He pulled me close, and I rested my head against his chest, hearing his heartbeat, steady and real. The man who'd lied to me. The man who'd told me the truth. The man who'd destroyed my reality. The man who'd given me a new one. My husband. My partner. My fellow survivor. And in the quiet of our mountain home, far from the shadows and secrets and lies, we lived. Not happily ever after, because that's not how real life works, but truly, honestly, together. And that was more than enough.